When you think of Japanese samurai, what image comes to mind? Probably one wearing traditional Japanese attire and carrying a sword. In fact, samurai typically wore 2 Japanese swords at their waist. Of these 2, the longer sword is called a katana, the standard sword, and the shorter one is known as a wakizashi. Samurai use these 2 swords differently, fighting on the battlefield with them. As a rule, a wakizashi refers to a Japanese sword with a blade's length of about 11.8 inches or more, but less than 23.6 inches. In contrast, a standard sword is longer, generally between about 27.6 inches to 31.5 inches. Broadly speaking, if the blade is shorter than 23.6 inches, it is considered a wakizashi. If longer, it is considered a primary sword. Many famous swords, known as masterpieces, were wakizashis, and they were very commonly used in Japan at that time. Renowned swordsmen who practiced 2-sword fencing, like Miyamoto Musashi, and the leader of the Shinsengumi Kondo Isami, are known to have favored longer wakizashis called o-wakizashi. Another difference between the katana and wakizashi lies in the curvature of the blade. Katanas, having longer blades, feature a greater curve. The greater the curve, the higher the killing power, so it is believed that the wakizashi, being shorter and more convenient to use, had less killing power. Similarly, there exists a tanto, which, like the wakizashi, has a short blade length, but does not have a guard, and is even smaller, with lengths less than 11.8 inches. Thus, there were various types of Japanese swords. Wakizashis began to appear in history around the 16th century. In 1552, records indicate that Oda Nobunaga, the greatest warlord in Japan at the time, wore a tachi and a wakizashi during his father's funeral and when meeting with the father of his official wife. A tachi refers to a sword that is even longer than the standard katana. Thus, it is evident that carrying 2 swords simultaneously was practiced at this time. The wakizashi became significantly popular during the Edo period. The reason for its popularity was the enactment of the Bukkei Shohatto, warrior house laws. These laws were established by Tokugawa Ieyasu, who unified Japan and held power at the time, dictating the rules that samurai and nobles were expected to follow. According to these laws, samurai were required to carry 1 katana and 1 wakizashi as a sidearm, which was considered formal attire. Prior to the Edo period, wakizashis used different mountings compared to the simultaneously carried katana. However, once the practice of wearing both swords became mandated, matching the handle and scabbard materials and colors of both swords became common, resulting in a more aesthetically pleasing appearance. What were the uses of the wakizashi? Primarily, the wakizashi served as a backup for the katana when it was damaged or unusable. In battle, it was common for the main weapon to break, so swordsmanship techniques using the wakizashi were developed and practiced. Schools that practiced the 2-sword fighting style, like that of the famous swordsman Miyamoto Musashi, included techniques such as throwing the wakizashi from a distance as a secret move, allowing the swordsman to close in on the opponent and strike with the katana while the opponent was distracted. Besides serving as a backup, the wakizashi's shorter length made it more convenient to use in confined spaces such as indoors, in towns, or in forests. Additionally, samurai protocol dictated that when entering a building, one was to remove their katana or tachi and place it on a rack or entrust it to someone, but the wakizashi could remain worn at the waist. When seated, the katana would not be immediately accessible, being either removed or placed beside or behind the seated individual, making the wakizashi the preferred weapon for responding to sudden attacks. Records show that in ceremonial contexts, although samurai were required to remove their katanas, they were expected to defend their lord with just the wakizashi if an incident occurred. It is known that they practiced in formal attire with the wakizashi and long hakama, indicating its use as a primary weapon outside the battlefield. The wearing of the wakizashi was prohibited only in a few restricted settings, such as in the presence of the shogun. Additionally, some roles of the wakizashi outside the battlefield reflect the harsh class system of Japan at the time. In historical Japan, there was a clear distinction between the samurai and peasant classes. There existed a policy known as kiri sute gomen, which allowed a samurai to legally strike down anyone of a lower class who showed disrespect. Under this system, it is said that a samurai would use his katana for the act, offering his wakizashi to the opponent to allow for a semblance of a fair fight before striking. However, in reality, instances where a peasant managed to counterattack or even seize the wakizashi, subsequently boasting in town about defeating a samurai, could lead to severe repercussions for the samurai, such as a loss of status or confiscation of property and possessions. Therefore, actual cases of kiri sute gomen were extremely rare. While we've discussed the role of the wakizashi for samurai, it's important to note that during the same period, wakizashis also played a significant role as weapons for non-samurai classes, such as peasants. During the reign of Toyotomi Hideyoshi, the ruler before Tokugawa Ieyasu, Hideyoshi feared uprisings by peasants and consequently confiscated all weapons from non-samurai classes, clearly delineating the social classes between samurai and non-samurai. This left peasants frequently subject to the whims of unreasonable samurai or gangsters without means of defense. The ban effectively ended peasant revolts, but also left them defenseless. However, under Tokugawa Ieyasu's rule, the wakizashi was classified as a supplementary weapon to the katana, not a katana itself, allowing non-samurai classes to carry wakizashis. This permission came quickly, and they began carrying wakizashis under the guise of self-defense. Without power, the common folk found the wakizashi an effective tool for protection. The wakizashi, being shorter and lighter, was easier to handle, even for those not skilled in swordsmanship, offering a significant advantage. Additionally, many samurai became nonin, masterless samurai, due to their serving clan being dissolved or other reasons. Among the nonin, it became common practice to wear only a katana, a style known as one-sword wear. Among the many famous swords recognized today, one notable wakizashi is Namazuo Toushirou. This sword was crafted by a master short sword maker, Awataguchi Yoshimitsu, who was active around the 13th century in what is now Kyoto Prefecture. Originally, this blade was a naginata, but it was shortened through polishing, transforming it into a wakizashi. The name Namazuo Toushirou comes from the rounded shape of the blade's tip, which resembles the tail of a catfish, Namazuo. Initially, This sword was in the possession of Oda Nobunaga's second son, and later passed into the hands of Toyotomi Hideyoshi. However, it was believed to have been destroyed in the fire that consumed Osaka Castle during the Siege of Osaka summer campaign, a battle in which Tokugawa Ieyasu vanquished the Toyotomi clan. After the war, Ieyasu lamented the loss of the sword with the castle. Moved by this, he ordered his swordsmith to recreate the sword, thus giving it a new life. This Wakizashi, which passed through the hands of several rulers, is currently housed in the Tokugawa Art Museum in Aichi Prefecture. We hope you enjoyed this exploration into the world of Japanese swords. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more exciting content about the history of Japanese swords. Until next time, sayonara.